Thank you, Erin, for the time to meet with me. I really appreciate you guys' support. I'm building a startup called Lulimi. It means tongue in my mother language. My startup is trying to teach people African languages using AI. When I came to the US, I realized that there's less opportunities for people who want to reconnect with your mother tongue, or if you have kids here and you want to teach them your language, there's kind of no way. I'm passionate about seeing Africans in the digital age. And after I graduated, I was like, why don't I do this full time? So I started building Lulimi. Right now, we're working on the MVP, figuring out who's the right person to bring right now, especially that this is very mission based. But anyway, that's a lot of things I've said.
I have like 10 responses, but first and foremost, congratulations on what you're doing and the acknowledgement you deserve from Peace First. My best startup experience actually is from a company called women.com that we started, and it was right at the beginning, and I mean right at the beginning of the internet. A woman started a company because when the internet started, it was built by men and it was very male in its look and feel. There was something called Netscape. It was gray, only gray. And so we figured out the majority of money is actually spent by women in so many realms. We created this sort of internet portal that women would come through that was much more female centric and could charge a lot more for our advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So that was like startup, bootstraps, money raising, all that stuff. Our CEO, who was ended up being a very close friend, she had started it alone in her house. And then eventually we went public, and it was all very exciting. We so rode the wave down, but you learn more on the way down than you do on the way up. If you have specific questions, or I can give you general thoughts, you tell me what's most helpful for you.
I'll give you specific questions that I have on my mind right now. And the first one, like I mentioned a little, is about equity split. I'm just not sure how to navigate those conversations around equity.
Look, the conversations are always tough, so this will be a big growth area for you as you navigate. But ultimately, it's totally okay. I mean, it's more than okay and acceptable that you're not giving away half the company to somebody. If you met the right person who you thought they have something to add in every realm, and I would love to this person to be my right arm for the next 7 to 25
Right.
years, you might consider giving them half the company. But for somebody who's filling a specific need, it's absolutely acceptable for that not to be the case. And so, I think that really what you might be saying to that person in any realm is, look, I have specific needs and you're sort of filling one of them. And I simply can't give you half the company for that. You know what I mean? And if this wins, we all win, even if you have 20% of the company. The way I think about it is that I'm going to, in the next 18 months or something, I'm going to fill 5 holes, right? I'm going to need you, and you're going to be my tech person. I'm using broad sweeping terms, right? Maybe you're going to have to bring somebody in for finance or some part-time person. You're going to have all those different things that might be a different piece. So think about how you break up the business, and then you sort of have that pie that you need to have 51% of. And so the rest is sort of up for grabs, but you have to be very thoughtful. Often, cash is like your most cherished thing when you have the money, but
Right.
sometimes you're forced into a situation where you're like, it's not my money, my cash is important, but not as important as my equity, and I'm not just going to give it away willy-nilly. I would say, frankly, having worked at a company called women.com, and we were an entire management team of women, it's important and it's great and it's critical, but the right answer in life is actually men and women working together. I've devoted myself to trying to have mixed teams for that very reason.
Hey, that's very helpful. When I go to some of these events, I'm based in New York, and they have these founder events, and they tell you all this information. A lot that I've been hearing, even before I got someone to help me, was people were like, no one's gonna wanna invest if you're like just one person. Like even if you're applying to Y Combinator, which I was wanting to get into, they were like, they don't invest in a single person startup. You have to have maybe 2 people, 3 people. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Wouldn't know specifically how they're thinking, but ultimately, a single point of failure is never a good thing. And one person is a single point of failure. They're investing in you, but they're investing in your idea that can be
Mm,
executed by you and others. So I can see where the sort of one person is difficult. Now, having said that, it's all chicken and the egg. You can't get more people until you have money. You can't get money until you have more people. And so ultimately, I think what they people really like to see is that
mm,
you have a support system.
mm,
You have peace first, right? You have
mm,
somebody on your advisory board who can just point you in the right direction or notice things. So it doesn't necessarily have to be paid people, right?
mm,
It just needs to be people in a network that have sort of put their
mm.
fingerprints and name on what you're doing.
Yeah.
But at some point, being more than one person is better than one person, right?
Thank you for shedding more light on that. And I'm still trying to learn so much. So bringing on a lot of people with so many titles that I can't even figure out right now feels like excessive. And I'm trying to focus first. Number one, the biggest piece is to get the MVP out. I feel like really good, especially having peace first. And that's the piece I said I think it would be nice going through this program and kind of grounding that community piece, through this workshop is one of my biggest goals. Have you worked with startups that are like mission based? And like, I just want to know, like, kind of strategy wise, like, are they going to venture capital?
I have been out of it a long time, but I would say that venture capitalists aren't hiding what they want. And unless you are at fine, they have funds that are dedicated to sort of mission driven businesses in a different way. I mean, let's be clear, mission driven is a very hot phrase. And so people are like, oh, it's mission driven, but we want profits, like
Yeah.
that I would say it is going to be much more difficult and it's too early.
Mm,
Again, unless somebody in your community says, "No, these guys invest really early on and they're gonna leave you alone." You get a tip, but otherwise, chase the money that is genuinely trying to stay aligned with what you want. This was also on my list of tips. This is a hard one to share, but it is, which is what you're doing is amazing and what you're trying to do is amazing, and so nobody wants to say, "No, not for me." And so you will have this is the one of the hardest things as we raise money through the years at different companies. You walk out of meetings and you're like, they're writing a check, like they
mm,
were like, this is amazing. What a great noble endeavor. And we need to, in my world, reach women more. And this is
mm,
great. What an opportunity. And you think like we were practically breaking out the champagne and then crickets, like nothing. Especially when you in particular are doing something so great for the world and so great for so nobody, you very rarely are going to get the person who says, look, yeah, love it, not for us. Temper the positive feedback. Not that it's not legit. They're telling you what you're doing is amazing, but this sense that you're going to get money from them. And
mhm.
if I were only allowed to tell you one thing,
Yeah.
it would say focus. Focus, 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 focus. No matter, and like post it noted onto your forehead
Right.
so you know what you wanna do, and
Mm,
that's great, and the minute I come to you and say, "Oh, this is great. I actually know somebody who wants to do this for, Gaelic, okay? And they're like whatever, and they have money and whatever, and now, like, that is not your focus, right? Your focus you have a singular focus in this moment, the problem is money comes with barnacles, these little things like, okay, but I can give you money, but only if you do Gaelic because I'm Irish, right? And you're like, all right, I'm going to dedicate 20% of my time to Gaelic just because I need the, and like, you just got to work really hard not to do that. And so, I mean, we have so many amazing, the CEO at Netflix was the most singularly focused person and so able to see further down the road. We used to say this early on, like, why don't we just put movie trailers on the website? Like they would, the studios would spend a fortune on
mm,
putting movie trailers. Like
yeah.
I'm not even selling ads that are offensive and not having to do with movies.
Mm,
And he'd say, because people can see movie trailers someplace else. And I'd say, I know, but we could take so much money. And he would say, this is not why customers come to our website. We're not doing movie trailer. Like he just could keep his eye on the prize. That's just an easy example, but there were just so many. We could sell ads on the site. There were so many things we didn't do because here's the thing, every one of those things keeps you from your singular mission. And I'm like, "No, no, it won't distract. I can
Right.
do this. I can do this in my extra 2 hours a day." And he would say, "Then that's 2 hours you're not focused on our core business that, we're signed on for." And so everything is a distraction despite that it doesn't look like a distraction. And so staying focused is really, really, really important. And there's going to be a lot of people with shiny objects pulling you into these other areas. And something, I'm not saying ignore everyone. One may be a better idea, a better way of teaching and keeping these languages alive than your path, then that's okay. But the other distractions, you just have to work really hard, especially because you have so limited resources and your time is the most valuable resource you have right now. And so you have to be super disciplined about how you use it.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Do you have any thoughts on like choosing advisors?
I would say in a way, even though I just gave you a lecture on focus, you can't have too many advisors.
Mm,
Meaning one person is going to be really good about like focusing on your mission and keeping it alive and having conversations about that. It's a collage, right? You're
right.
rarely going to have that person who's like, "Oh, I can check every one of your boxes." And so I would say, collecting advisors is amazing and I would do it as freely as you can.
Like the two advisors have said they would like be happy to work with me, but we need to sign like an equity agreement. And I was like, oh, I don't know how much, like, I've been looking and people are like, oh, maybe like 1% for each advisor. And I'm like, okay, if I have three, that's like 3%.
Right. So here's the thing. Early, it's tough, right? Because you
Yeah.
offer somebody 1%, you might as well just, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
feels like such an insult because, and I get it. And that's sort of down the line.
Yeah.
And 1% of something is worth a lot. And it feels very, and so ultimately, you remember you can push back and say, look,
Mhm.
obviously, I hope to have a board and an advisory board all of whom are compensated with equity. But I haven't even incorporated yet. I don't even have my equity. Like, this isn't where I am. I'm looking for people to help me navigate this next phase. And I'm curious if you're interested in helping me with that, you know?
Mm,
Um, and everything also doesn't need to be formalized, you know?
right.
You may have a call with somebody and they're really helpful. And people are going to be honest. People are get,
Mm,
about money and say, look, this is our third call in 3 weeks. And I do this with other companies and I get compensated. And you can say, Greg, can you take me through how are you compensated? How did they do that? How many people employees did they have when they started compensating with equity? Because I'm just me on my
right.
weekends, working
Exactly.
through this. Just try to surround yourself with people who can provide you with information
Yeah.
that helps move you along.
No, I appreciate that, especially on the advice piece. I think because the people I'm meeting at some of these events kind of push the formal like signing stuff. I did not feel like I had that voice to be like I can't. So it's been like okay, if they tell me that, I just like I don't follow up. I'm like I guess that's done. Like
Try not to burn any bridges because it could be that I'm making this up. You met somebody, they're saying you need to give me equity, and then you speak to somebody in your world says, "Oh my gosh, they're the guys you want or the girl."
mm,
People. They're gonna introduce you. They're grant writers. They're gonna get you money, whatever that might be. And I just don't know whether they are or aren't or how to just remember that they may work, they may not, and it may be in 3 years or 5 years. So you may run into that person in 2 years. Once now you have an advisory board and you raise some money and they're like, "Oh my gosh," and whatever else it may be. So just think of it as that. Every meeting, every hand you shake it may have impact for all the right reasons at a later date. So it's a long game. You're playing the long game. You have short-term goals, but you also are sort of building and having those relationships. So in any event, I would not be signing any pieces of paper this
okay.
early too. I think you're thinking about it the right way. Um, and you'll know when you have this roadblock and this single
Mm,
most important thing and you cannot achieve it and whatever that may be. Again, it could be the grants, it could be the technology, it could be
mm,
and if somebody can come and solve that problem, you're gonna wanna pay them to do it. So, until you get that sense, that feeling like, "No,
yeah.
I would pay them out of my own pocket. Like, that's how I need this and want this, and they are filling a hole that I cannot
Mm.
fill. Until that you're there, keep it close to your chest.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's it. The call has been very helpful. I know you've shared a lot of pieces of advice, but what do you think makes social enterprises successful? What do you think it takes?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, ultimately, there's practicality in everything. There are win-wins, right? You can save your languages and keep them alive, and
Mm-hmm.
also find a way to make it an economically feasible endeavor, right?
Mm.
This isn't just about like people are gonna give you money and you're just
Yeah.
gonna spend that, right? And love it when people find the ultimate win-win, right? You just sort of need to find it. So it's the
Mm.
purely virtuous endeavors that don't have two sides to the coin that are
Mm.
very hard to fund. They're very hard. Business people are going to be less interested
Mm.
um, in that.
Well, thank you very much.
But we'll catch up again. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm so excited for you and what you're trying to do.